Moonshiners. Mark and Digger enlist safe help to boost production in the dense, misty forests of Appalachia, where the land holds secrets older than the mountains themselves. Two men, Mark and Digger, are embarking on a journey to increase their moonshine operation. They've been making illegal liquor for years, weathering countless challenges along the way. But in recent seasons of the popular reality show Moonshiners, they've reached a crossroads. Their traditional methods, honed through decades of trial and error, are becoming less efficient. To stay ahead of the competition, not only do they need to boost production, but they need to do it safely. Mark and Digger have always been known for their ingenuity and their ability to keep their operations running smoothly, despite the inherent risks that come with moonshining. But as the pressure to scale their business grows, they decide to enlist a safe, new method of helping them increase their production capacity without jeopardizing their safety or their business. This journey to expand their operation and their careful selection of allies will serve as the basis for their latest challenge. The need for a boost. When Mark and Digger first began their moonshining adventure, they worked with small copper stills, handcrafting each batch of moonshine with the care and pride that has been passed down through generations. But as the demand for their homemade liquor grew, they realized they needed to increase their output to stay competitive in the world of illegal spirits. Larger stills were needed, and that meant more complicated processes, increased risk, and greater attention to detail. The trouble was, the more complex the operation, the greater the risk of getting caught. Over the years, Mark and Digger had perfected their skills, evading the law, keeping their heads down, and making sure their operations went unnoticed. However, as technology advanced, so did the techniques for finding moonshine operations. They knew that if they were going to succeed in the future, they would have to change their approach. Increasing production while maintaining a low profile meant making changes to the way they operated. The duo could no longer rely on their traditional ways alone. The need for outside help was clear. Enlisting safe help. Mark and Digger have always had a small but trusted network of fellow moonshiners and underground allies. These individuals are not just fellow liquor makers, they are survivalists, engineers, and even former law enforcement, all of whom share an interest in staying one step ahead of the law. They needed to expand this network in ways they hadn't considered before, finding experts who could increase their efficiency and safety while still maintaining the utmost discretion. That's where Charlie, a retired engineer with a background in industrial design, came in. Charlie had been watching the show for years, and after a brief conversation with Mark at a local bar, he offered a solution. "I can help you scale up your operation," he told Mark. "But you're going to need to do it differently. You need something safer, less likely to burn down the woods, more efficient, and less detectable." Charlie's pitch was simple. "You've got to modernize, but keep it under the radar. I can build you new equipment that will let you make more shine, quicker, with less risk." Charlie's first suggestion was to install custom-made stills that could be used more efficiently and allow for larger batches without the risk of leaking or exploding. Most moonshiners relied on rudimentary equipment. A simple copper still was often enough to make good moonshine. But as Mark and Digger learned, relying on smaller stills meant working more slowly and laboriously, with the ever-present risk of failure. "I've been around long enough to know that everything has a lifespan," said Charlie. "Your traditional stills are great for small batches, but to scale up and maintain quality, we need to incorporate some new designs." These new stills would allow them to increase their production capacity while maintaining the same quality they'd become known for. The key was using materials that were heat-resistant and reinforced to prevent any accidental leaks or explosions. They could also implement automated systems for controlling the temperature, a crucial factor in making sure the shine was distilled correctly. However, just having the right equipment wouldn't be enough. Charlie also suggested incorporating modern safety practices, something Mark and Digger hadn't considered before. The reality of illegal moonshining is that it's dangerous. The risk of fire, poisoning, and even death is ever present. But by incorporating new, safer techniques, Mark and Digger could ensure they didn't just scale up their operation. They could do so without putting themselves or anyone else in danger. Upgrading the process, Mark and Digger were both intrigued. They had lived through the backwoods methods that had served them well for decades, but they also recognized that they were at a crossroads. Could Charlie's proposed changes really make a difference? And would it be worth the risk? Mark, ever the optimist, was the first to embrace the idea. "You're saying we can make more, faster, and safer?" he asked Charlie. "If we can get the same taste and quality, then why not try?" Digger, on the other hand, was more cautious. "I'm not sure I trust some engineer who's never even made a batch of shine," he said. "But I'll give it a shot, just don't mess up my recipe." With a combination of doubt and hope, they began the process of modernizing their stills. Charlie's first task was to build a larger, more efficient still that would allow them to produce higher quality moonshine at a faster pace. It involved redesigning their entire distillation system, something that was both exciting and intimidating. As Charlie got to work, Mark and Digger had to think about more than just the equipment. They needed to keep everything under wraps. In this line of work, discretion is everything. If their operation was discovered, they could face heavy fines, jail time, or worse. That's why they decided to enlist the help of a trusted crew of safe friends, people who could work discreetly and with the kind of knowledge that would ensure the operation remained as clandestine as possible. One of these trusted individuals was a former Navy mechanic named Jake. He'd spent years fixing machinery and had an impressive background in engineering. Jake worked with Charlie to integrate the new stills into their existing setup, ensuring that the new systems wouldn't raise any suspicion from the authorities or anyone who might be watching from a distance. He also helped design a discreet cooling system that would prevent the scent of the distillation process from escaping into the air. This was crucial, as the smell of boiling mash could attract unwanted attention in an area that was known for law enforcement surveillance. Another important part of their strategy was improving the efficiency of their production timeline. Rather than waiting hours for a batch to be distilled, the new system allowed for a quicker turnaround. The faster they could work, the more they could produce, which was key to keeping up with the increasing demand. But even with faster production, they couldn't afford to sacrifice quality. Moonshine is an art, after all, and Mark and Digger knew that they'd built their reputation on taste as much as on their secrecy. The first batch, once the new equipment was in place, it was time for the first test. The entire crew gathered around, watching with anticipation as Charlie and Jake adjusted the controls and fired up the stills. Mark and Digger's nerves were palpable. Would it work? Would the equipment hold up? And most importantly, would the final product taste as good as it always had? As the first batch started to distill, the familiar smell of the mash filled the air, and the sound of bubbling liquid echoed through the forest. Slowly, the moonshine began to flow into the collection jar. Mark and Digger exchanged glances, their excitement growing. Finally, it was time to taste the results. Mark poured a small glass and took a sip. His eyes widened with approval. "Well, I'll be damned," he said with a grin. "That's better than I expected." Digger took his turn, swirling the moonshine in the glass and taking a careful sip. "It's smoother, and it's stronger," he noted. "I think we've done it." The new stills worked, and the moonshine was just as good, if not better, than anything they'd ever made. They'd successfully increased their production capacity, all while keeping everything under the radar. Conclusion: with Charlie's help, and the support of their trusted crew, Mark and Digger had managed to scale up their moonshine operation without compromising the quality that made their product so sought after. They'd successfully implemented modern techniques to increase production, all while staying safe and keeping their operation hidden from the authorities. The next phase of their journey would be challenging, but for the first time in a long time, they felt confident about their future. As they watched the sun set over the Appalachian Mountains, Mark and Digger raised a glass of their latest batch. "Here's to the future," Mark said with a grin, "and to safe help when it's done right." Digger nodded. "To bigger and better atches."